A mural honoring Emily Pike was painted on a large water tank located on the San Carlos Apache tribal land, visible from US Route 70 east of Globe and near the town of Peridot. The mural is a site where community members, including Emily's family and members of the Red Rum Motorcycle Club, added red handprints to symbolize the MMIWG crisis. Welcome to this episode of Navajo Tea Time. This series is to explore MMIWG cases that often fall under the radar and get overlooked. Today we're talking about the case of Emily Pike. Emily Pike was a 14-year-old member of San Carlos Apache tribe who was found murdered in Arizona in February of this year after going missing from a group home in Mesa in January. The FBI is investigating her murder and offering a reward, while the Gila County Sheriff's Office is leading the case. Emily's family believes that she may be alive today if previous issues, including an alleged sexual assault, had been handled differently by authorities. This case is really heartbreaking because she was so young and because it just is, like, for me personally, I have a daughter who is around this age and Emily was younger. And so it's just like, it hits differently, I think, even though, all of these cases are tragic in their own right. A little bit about who Emily was is, and the situation that she was in and the circumstances leading up to her disappearance. She was the custody, of the San Carlos Apache Tribe Social Services Department. She went missing on January 27th, leaving on foot from Sacred Journey, Inc., a group home that caters to girls aged 7 through 18. She and another child escaped through a bedroom window after medication was administered. One of the girls living in the group home told staff that they saw Emily crawling out of the window wearing a pink and gray striped long sleeve shirt. There had been previous incidences where she had also run away. Apparently, there were 3 other times that she had left the group home prior to 2023. There had also been previous police involvement where police responded to a suicide attempt in November 2023, and she was placed in the group home after reporting a sexual assault in September 2023. The suspect was arrested but released, and the case was dropped. For a girl her age, in 2023, she was 12. So, very young. And these are some, this is really, really awful for someone that young to be dealing with this stuff. Okay, so according to our resources that were provided in the media, the group home had reported her disappearance. However, there was question about if it had been done properly or in a timely manner, and an investigation was launched into that. While at the same time, legal authorities were searching for her. And, weeks had gone by before a call came in. Hikers had found her remains on February 14th, 2025, in black contractor trash bags in the woods north of Globe, off of Highway 60 in Gila County, Arizona, about 100 miles from where she was last seen. The Gila County Sheriff's Office announced the discovery on February 27th, 2025. She went missing January 27th, and her remains were found on the 14th. And then the announcement was made on the 27th, so exactly 1 month later.
I heard in reports that they didn't report her missing right away. I don't know if that was just social media clickbait or there was any other evidence.
So there was an allegation about that, and an investigation was launched, and it did prove that the group home did report her in the manner that they were supposed to. Because there's a different policy and there's certain hotlines they're supposed to call right away, and they were in compliance. However, there were many concerns that were brought to light from her family. They believe that she might still be alive if the case before had been prosecuted. And her father is also suing Sacred Journey Inc., alleging negligence in her death and that the group home's employees were inexperienced and reckless. The Department of Child Safety has also opened a licensing inquiry into the group's home. So that's kind of like the information that I was able to find. The status of each case, I didn't go into. I didn't dig too deeply into, but I wanted to focus primarily on what we knew about what happened to her. The medical examiner determined that her cause of death was homicidal violence by blunt force trauma to the head. And the hikers, when they notified authorities of what they had found, they looked through it and they found that her hands and arms were missing and still haven't been recovered. So it is just such a heartbreaking case. I mean, it really it tears one apart when you're reading about this stuff. And many people in the community did respond to what had happened. In regard to community action, a mural was created on a water tank to honor Emily Pike and to raise awareness. This was in collaboration with the community that she's from and the local artists who wanted to bring attention to the issue. There was also a pretty well publicized candlelight vigil that was held here in Phoenix, and members from all the different tribes in the valley all responded, which I thought was pretty powerful, where family members came together along with the community to, share their grief and place handprints on the mural. It was just, there were also marches. I remember seeing marches around the city, and the news was reporting people who had made signs and were, calling for justice. Unfortunately, the investigation is still ongoing and there hasn't been a named suspect. The FBI is investigating her murder and offering a reward, while the Gila County Sheriff's Office is leading the case. I looked into what the reward consists of, and the total award is $200,000. The FBI is offering $75,000. San Carlos Apache Tribe is offering $75,000, and Silent Witness is offering $25,000. So if anybody on here has any information or any kind of suspicion, that's who you could reach out to. Gila County Sheriff's Office is leading the case, and we can put their information below. And I think that, bringing justice is so important, especially when it comes to something like this. Missing, murdered women and girls is a serious, serious issue. And that's why we wanted to launch this series. I think the impact to the community has been great because it has kind of sent out an alarm bell to those who live here, a reminder that we're not as safe as we think. This was a predatory kill. Somebody had thought this out. And what happened from the time that she left the group home to her demise is unknown. But it was at least a 2-week period. It's enough concern, I think, for us to be humbled in the sense that we need to always be aware of what's going on with our youth. What issues are they dealing with, and how can we provide them support in a meaningful way? How can we call for justice immediately and do what is needed to get them the help they need and to be supportive of them, to believe them, and to also prosecute when needed? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the particulars of the case before, but I mean, that's a pretty serious allegation that I don't think kids just make this stuff up.
I was just wondering, like, I know I've read stuff too where like her family was really involved with the investigation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What were the, I don't know, like the circumstances of her being in a group home? It's hard to like, there's just so many things like being removed from your family, and also some
Hmm.
of the family still being heavily involved.
I mean, from what I was able to, what I found in the searches I did was that her family did love her deeply. However, and they're definitely impacted and saddened by what happened. You know, the stress of what they're going through is immense. Why she was removed, that wasn't disclosed because for a number of reasons. Most likely, like when in an instance like this, when there's a minor involved, the details of these cases are not made public, nor are the details of any kind of sexual assault, things like that. Like that's private information. Even like the names of those that were prosecuted, if they were not prosecuted and they're not serving time, if they were somehow, if the case was dismissed or if it even had gone, you know, if it didn't go anywhere, they're not going to share that information. So for that reason, I wasn't able to find any of those details, and I didn't make it a point to reach out to anyone from their family. I feel like they're still dealing with a lot. This is still relatively new. I mean, we're still in 2025 and the case is still ongoing. So, from what and these are all assumptions, but I'm thinking if she was, if there was, if that's what happened, if there was a sexual assault that occurred and it was affecting her deeply, and there's also a documented suicide attempt. She was obviously going through something that maybe her family wasn't equipped to manage, but also, and this is just an assumption, but maybe it was something that happened in the home. Maybe it wasn't her family. Maybe it was someone who visited her family. I don't know who had done that to her. Or maybe it had happened at that home and she just couldn't be in that environment anymore and they didn't know like what else to do or where else to place her. I have no idea. But when something like that happens to a young girl, it's it's like your world is falling apart. You know what I mean? It's like everything shatters and the stability that was once there is gone. And I don't know how her family dealt with that. I don't know how what support systems she had in place. I don't think that it takes away from how much they loved and cared about her. I'm assuming that, you know, because sometimes when a parent has a child that's going through something deeply and they feel powerless in that situation, they seek out help to assist. And I think they were probably hoping that this group home would help her get through this period because she was going through, you know, there was an investigation that occurred, there was like law enforcement and attorneys involved, right? Like healthcare professionals, most likely as well. So having her be out of the home at that time, especially if maybe it had occurred either at her home or close to her home, it might have just been too much for her. I don't know. There's many reasons why things like that happen. And I'm sure they were hoping that whatever she was going through, she would get the help that she needed so that she could come home eventually and that she would have the tools she needs to be able to live her life in a good way. You know, I don't think there's any family out there that's like, oh, I'm gonna send my child to a group home because I don't want them or I don't love them. You know what I mean? Like that's, I mean, I can't speak for every parent, but that's just, I think sometimes, I don't know, there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of circumstances that were not disclosed and I'm not aware
Yeah, I
of.
remember
Hmm.
when this first came out, her case, I feel like sometimes when the kids are so young,
Hmm.
it draws a lot more attention. It did get a lot of social media attention and like those people calling out how different the responses from local news reports. Yeah, it was just another case that highlighted it for like a brief moment, but it
Hmm.
feels like we get like that sometimes. Sometimes there's a case that's just so horrible and unfathomable that like it gets a blip even into the mainstream media, but then it levels back out again.
Yeah, it sucks because like there's so much going on right now. There's wars happening. You know what I mean? There's an administration that are behaving like agents of chaos, you know, and not just federally, but on the state level, on the tribal level. Like it's just there's so much happening. People are deeply affected. We're in a government shutdown right now. You know what I mean? Like there's, and not just federally, but also within the Navajo Nation. Like we're going through a lot. People are losing their jobs. They're not getting paid. There's people that are worried about not knowing how they're going to pay their rent or their mortgage or their bills or their medical prescriptions. Like, it's fraught times. And I think in January also, when this happened and around the time that the news was released, this was also around the same time when a lot of the executive orders from the Trump administration were going out. And so that was a reason, I think, where media attention was being taken away. Not that this wasn't important, but also if you look at the context of the times we're living in, it's freaking crazy. And, even like earthquakes are happening and tornadoes are touching down. Like, it's all crazy. A lot's going on right now. We're really going through it. And it doesn't take away from what happened here. School shootings are still happening. Like, there's a lot of stuff going down in America. And I think that's why that attention, like something like this, does look like a blip. You know what I mean? The seriousness of this case stands. And the fact that it's still open and there's still information that can be provided if people were to come upon it, the responsibility of those to report it, I think, is great and would be very helpful to solving this case. And the truth of it, if anything, is that a person did this.
Mm.
Animals don't do things like this. Like, people do things like this. So what that means that there's a person in Phoenix and in the area around it that has the ability to do something like this horrific, and they're still out there. There's somebody walking around right now with the ability to behave this way right now as we speak. And so we need to be careful, and we need to keep our eyes open and our ears open and pay attention and listen and do everything we can to, like, it's like not to live in fear, but the person who did this has not been caught. From what we know, these people that can do stuff like this, it's not usually a one-time thing. This person probably has done this before, and they're probably going to do it again.
Yeah, I think one thing I kind of want to mention is like when we were selecting these cases, we wanted to have a specific element, but when we typed it in, it felt like, so when I was doing the initial research for some of these cases, we wanted like maybe specifically for like our spooky season episode, we wanted like, oh, is there a supernatural element or an extraterrestrial element? But I feel like a lot of the reporting of these cases did a good job in keeping everything rooted in reality and that like these are being done by people to people. So I know sometimes there's like stories of like, oh, people get lost in these specific mountains or these specific woods and it's probably ghosts or spirits or cryptids, but I feel like the reporting of these cases of MMIW have been very good at making sure it's all kept in reality and not just chalking it away to superstition and making sure people know that these are done by people. That was
Yeah,
one
it's
thing we discovered when trying to do research on these
right.
episodes. It's kind of annoying because it ruined our whole theme, but it's refreshing to know that they're taking these seriously as done by humans. Not like, oh, well, there's those mountains are just spooky and sometimes people go missing. Ha ha ha. It's like, no, these are serious and it's something that needs to be looked into and paid attention to and not just brushed aside.
And, I think there's this veneer of safety that certain communities start to believe. I drive around at night and I see kids walking around, like high school age kids. They're walking around like in little groups, or, I see like women jogging and men jogging. And at night, like, it's pitch black. Like, sometimes they're in areas and they just have a headlamp, and I'm just like, see, I wouldn't do that because I'm scared, but kudos to them for being brave. But still, I'm just like, there's this veneer of safety that's always there. I don't think that we realize how dangerous it can be. I think if you're not if you're not directly exposed to things like this, I think sometimes you start to think that, oh, I live, like, I'm safe, I'm in a bubble, a protective bubble. And I think the truth is that we really need to, like, be super cautious. And I think what really upsets me is, like, the fact that she was able to run away 3 times. That says a lot about the oversight of the home that she was in. And that does upset me too, because I'm just like, these are kids. Like 7 to 18, how is that even possible that she can, that she can get out like that? And it's like, why? They need to take better care, be more attentive. Like, what precautions could have prevented something like
Well,
this?
if someone's determined to get out, they're gonna find a way out. If you think about when
Mm-hmm.
you were a kid and if you ever snuck out of the house,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was to, just kids are crafty and a lot more capable, I think. I know some people, oh, they're just dumb kids, we can take care of them, but you have to definitely be, on top of it and be like, no, we have to check on them every hour. We gotta make sure doors and things are locked. We have, you need to take precautions because
Mm-hmm.
kids are sneaky. Kids are great planners when they want to be. They
Yeah.
can,
But I mean, I'm not even talking about locked doors and bars on the windows. Like, additionally, how about creating an environment where they feel safe, where they feel supported, where they feel like they don't have to run away, that what they need is right there. You know what I mean? Like, how about creating an environment like that for these kids who really need it? I mean, if anyone deserves something like that type of environment, it's these kids. These kids that are in these group homes, away from their families, away from their home, away from anything familiar. Like, additional care should be given to them. They should be nurtured, and watched over and monitored, of course, as a backup plan. But like, there's other ways to keep children from wanting to run away. Children run away from places they don't feel safe or wanted. They're willing to because kids aren't stupid either. They know the dangers. And if they're willing to risk the dangers, there must have been a reason why. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, and like you get these facilities that are just in it for the money too. Like you hear about all these
Mhm,
horrible stories about rehab facilities down in Phoenix that come up to the reservation, just grab
mhm,
the Glawnies off of the street and take
mhm,
them back to Phoenix and just start charging their state-funded medical insurance and their social security and
mhm,
just start pocketing that money from themselves. And they
mhm,
claim to be a rehab facility, but they're not taking care of them the way they should be. And sometimes that happens
mhm,
with group homes too. They just like you hear stories about like foster parents just fostering as many kids as they can to collect those checks and not even taking care of
mhm.
the children. It's
Yeah.
really bad and it's hard to say that like sometimes people just don't have good intentions.
I mean, obviously, look what happened to her. You know what I
Right?
mean? Like, obviously, it's like multiple failures on the parts of the people in her life. I think we should talk about systems and systems change, because you did mention that we're always blaming systems. And the truth is, a lot of the systems are the problem. And so, again, there change is really, really difficult for anybody who works within a system, be it education, healthcare, or at companies where they work. And organizational change is probably one of the most challenging endeavors that any leader or any worker bee will encounter. It doesn't matter, it affects everyone at all levels. And so, in regard to the case we're talking about, we see these gaps in the system that allowed a child to fall through, and there was no safety net there to catch her. And so, safety nets are very, very important, like the metaphorical safety net. How do we catch those that fall through these system gaps? And, sometimes the answer is not always to change the whole system. I think some of us want to modify systems to improve them, and then others want to hold on to them because that's their stability. But I think creating safety nets are very, very key, and that could be like a third option, like a creative third option.
Yeah, it's like but sometimes it's so hard because then you need to create like people to look at the system and identify these problems. And people sometimes don't like to admit that there are problems there. Sometimes we get in our own ways of being
Mhm.
able to take care of our community.
I don't know if it's too personal to ask, but like, what's one thing you think could have been done differently to change the outcome of this case? Or what would you do if you had the ability to make one influential decision that would switch the trajectory of what happened, what would that be?
I think one key part of this case is funny, like, why was she running away? Why was she in the group home? And
Mhm.
I think figuring out why she kept running away, obviously she was either running towards something or away from something. And
Mhm.
knowing that and being able to reach her on that level probably would have been able to save her life.
Mhm.
But then maybe, like people are like, oh, she's in this home, we can rest a little bit.
Mhm.
Whatever was getting to her or she was trying to get to
Mhm.
was just stronger.
That's a good answer. Yeah, I think like the nurturing of those who are suffering and trying to find the right help for them is is always challenging. It's such a big endeavor and sometimes you don't know if you're making the right choice or not. But, I think that when somebody is in such a dire place where they're wanting to take their own lives, you got to handle them with such good care, and finding out what she was running from or toward, just answering that question right there. I think you're right. I think things could have been done differently. We don't know why, we don't know the circumstances around what happened before she went to the group home, but I'm pretty sure there were things during that time period where she maybe could have been protected better, or maybe I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was like we never know, like if it was like something random or if it was something like that had happened. I don't know. Like I guess from what we know and the information that's been provided, I think like addressing things with her family would probably have been really helpful. You know what I mean? But we don't know if she didn't want to be at home either. You know what I mean? Like we don't know the circumstances there.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. I hope this episode was informative. I hate saying
If
enjoyable.
anything, I know, no. I think if anything, I hope people who are learning about this case are aware that the case is still open and are aware of the resources that they can tap into to provide information if they happen to come upon it.
But yeah, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We have merch on our fourth wall page through Happy Accidents.
Hmm.
But